Okay, so we're going to run through lino printing and the process of lino printing, but I just first want to show you, go through some of the basics behind creating your initial design. So you'll need to come up with designs, and the best designs are designs that have a strong contrast between dark and light. So they're going to be really black and white designs with lots of positive, negative space, and I'll show you examples of those shortly. But in the meantime, I'm just going to show you some examples of the different types of media that you can actually use. So there's a number of different sorts of material that you can use, from simple blocks like we used in class. So very simple blocks, to this type. Did you get that sort in your pack?
Yes.
Yep. So it's very flexible. It's got a sort of pattern side and then a smooth side. The smooth side's the side that you carve. So that flexi, I can't remember what it's called, but flexi. You've got the easy carve that we talked about the other day. Then you've got this one, which has two sides. It's actually double-sided, so you can hypothetically use both sides. It depends how heavily you carve. More often than not, you would only use one side. Sometimes this has a bit of a pattern, and in this case it's got a bit of a funny pattern on this side, so I would use that side. So always just check to make sure whichever's the smoothest you would use. There's also another sort, which is this one, and it's flexible like that green one, but it's a little bit, it's just a bit different, but it's not bad, quite like that. Again, I can't remember where I got that or the type. And then you've got this sort, which is silk cut lino. So that's called silk cut. That's the good side. And this is actual linoleum. So this is what artists use. This is the real deal. It's called silk cut, and it's linoleum. So it's old-fashioned linoleum that your grandma had on the floor at home. And if you smell it, it has a really strong smell of sawdust and linseed oil. And for me, I associate that smell with 1970s art classes, where you always had to carve with very blunt tools, very hard old lino. And it had that very, very particular smell about it. So there's a couple of different sorts. Now, these ones are lovely and soft no matter what. These ones, and to a lesser degree this one, but particularly lino, is going to really respond to being warmed up. So it's not great to use on a cold day. It's going to be really hard. So what I normally do is I make myself a cup of tea, and then I put the lino under my bum and I sit on the lino and I warm it up nicely before I start. Equally, you can periodically sit it on to the top of a heater or something like that. If you've got ducted heating, you can put over a heating duct, but you want it to warm up, and the warmer it is, the easier it is put in the sun. It's just easier to carve. When this is really cold, it's quite hard to carve. So there's a few different types of lino there. Now, the number one thing probably that people make the mistake of doing with lino is they forget that it's going to reverse. So this is this way, but if this is the bit of paper and I go like that, it's going to print in reverse. It's going to reverse. Can you understand that? It's going to reverse. So we want to avoid that, problems with that. Now, problems that are going to be things like if you were to do writing. So if I was going to write Tracy, I'm going to have to write Tracy backwards rather than forwards because it's going to print wrong. If I was going to do something where it was a particular landmark and it was going to look strange in reverse, then I would need to make sure that I reversed my image first. So all I would need to do is take it into Photoshop, reverse the image, and then I'd be right to go. So reversing the original image, it's not a bad idea to do anyway, because I find often you have a vision of what you want it to look like, and it doesn't match how it actually comes out. So I'm a bit slack on drawing stuff up first. I'm a bit freeform, and I'll show you this one here. Now this one here came from a drawing. So I'd done this drawing, this watercolour, and from this I loosely created this, and you can see I've changed it. It's obviously a different format, and this prints like that. So we can see clearly that it's reversed. Yeah. This is on either side. So that's like that, and it's reversed. The number one thing that's really critical to understand, and this is the bit that can be tricky, is that what you carve away is going to be white. So what you carve is going to be white. Now that means that, say, this one here, if you can see that, it's a thing of flowers. I don't know if I put it. Yeah. So with this print here, this thing of flowers, because in this case I wanted just the flowers to show up, I needed to carve everything away except the flowers. So all of this has been carved away, and just the flowers have been left. So it's a reversal process, and it helps sometimes to colour black the bits that you want to keep, and then remember to carve away the white bits. That can help. In this case, this is one that I was doing last night. So in this case, it's just a simple little one. You can see that this is dark. I just coloured in the bits that I wanted to keep, so I knew vaguely what it was going to look like, and I'm then able to continue to carve that surface. Now this is, I'll just get rid of that stuff. This is a bench hook. It's a very simple device, and all it is it's just got an edge on the bottom. An edge on the bottom. So that just hooks in to the edge of your bench, and that way it won't move. And then when you're carving, you can pop that there, and it won't move away. Now you guys, and I haven't got one here, but you guys have got that funny little red bulbous thing. Now the idea of that is, and it's got a little right angle. You put that little right angle in like that, and you hold the top of it, and you can carve that way. So it's doing a similar thing. It's just a little bit more portable. These are super easy to make, and in actual fact, you don't really need that edge. It's kind of good just to have a couple of edges. You can make it as large or as small as you want it to be. This one is, it's an issue if it's too small, if it won't fit into the whole thing fits. So this is a fairly small one, but that's quite good, and you can turn it around as you need. I'm not mad on this one because it's a bit too small, because then if I want to go that way, I can't get it to fit. So even if it was that long, sort of A3 size would probably be a good scale to work with. Lino tools. Now, the Lino tools that you use, I think I've given you a set like this, just a simple little Japanese set of tools. So relief carving comes from Japan, so it's a Japanese thing. And these tools are Japanese tools. They're not particularly expensive ones. You can buy very, very, very expensive ones. These are fairly simple ones, but they do the job. They're fine. You can buy, which I kind of don't mind, is this sort of set here. And you can unscrew that, and that becomes a tool. And the rest of the tools are in here. And then this becomes a barren for rubbing on the surface for when you're actually doing the final print. So that's not a bad little system there. There's a number of different ones. What I like about this system is it's quite comfortable in your hand. So it's quite comfortable to carve with. And you can get different sorts. I think, yeah, this is SD, this brand, but Speedball make the same kind of thing as well. So there's a number of different brands that make them. So that's your standard tools, and they'll be fine. I've got a couple of different brands. There's another set from back in the day, and there's a Micador set. These ones come with a sharpening stone, if I can get it out. And the idea of the sharpening stone is that you put some water into here and you're rubbing along like that with the water in there. So it's a standard sharpening on the angle that the tool's done at, and you run along like that. I'm not very good at sharpening tools. It's a bit of an art to it. I normally get Chris to do it. That's a nice set there, but they're blunt as can be. So, number of different types. I think you've got that set there, and that's perfectly fine for what we're doing at the moment. Okay, so when it comes to carving, the first and foremost thing is it's dangerous. This is a very dangerous thing, because what happens, people do this, they're carving, and they do this. What's going to happen is we're going to go like that, and we're going to stick it in our jugular here, and we're going to copious quantities of blood, and you'll have to go to hospital, and it's not a good time to be doing that. So we don't want that to happen. So we never, ever, ever want to have this hand in front. And in fact, it's good if you can do this. So I often use this hand or this finger to guide the tool, and that's where the bench hook comes in, or the little one that you guys have got, because you can move it around as required, and we can carve away like that. I'm just going to swap my tool around. Now, different tools. The V tool will do a fine cut. A fine V tool like that one compared to that one. So there's two. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Pretty hard to see. This one's a lot finer than the other one. So depending on the thickness of the cut, you would use that. And then the U tool, which is like a U shape, is for carving thicker. This is quite cold, so it won't be easy to do, but you can see how I can take a large area. Yes, I can carve out a very wide shallow, as opposed to the very fine, which enables me to do a very, 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 you probably can't even see it. And then the medium one is going to allow me to do fine, but not crazy fine like that one. A small, shallow one that one's blunt. You can tell it's blunt because it'll skid, so that's something to look out for. So whenever you're carving, we want to be carving away from ourselves, and we want to be carving nice and slow and steady and flat. So you can see I've got that flat like that. So I'm carving very flat, not carving down, like I'm not digging down into it. I'm carving nice and flat. And the reason for that is that I don't want to dig right into it. If I dig right into it, I'll just dig a hole all the way through, and we don't want to do that. So just nice and slow and steady, and you can see I've got this hand behind, or alternatively, if you're doing a long cut, you can use this hand to steady the other hand. Sometimes people like to leave a border, a la that kind of thing. So a border that's around the whole thing. That's not a bad thing to do, and your print will have a border around it on the outside. Particularly when you've got quite a large area, that can work. That can be a good thing to do. I work in the direction that I'm going in, so you can see, I could have gone that way, but I want to go this way. And I don't mind if I see, I'd quite like to have little tiny bits show through in the final print. So I'm not going too deep, and I'm not using the shallow tool because I actually kind of want to see some little bits. I don't want it to be perfect. That's just me. When you get to that point, it can be kind of hard to see whether you've got it all and whether you're happy with it. One thing you can do at this point is what we would call proofing that matrix. So we can get the lino and we can just, we could do this equally with ink. Actually, I might even do it with ink because I'm going to show you the actual printing process shortly. I'll just get some ink. Oh, I can't open it. Hang on. So if I'm careful, and this is really just giving me an idea of how it's going to look. It's not the be all and end all, but it's giving me an idea of whether it's going to work and whether there's something that I should change before I start printing. So that can be a really good way to work. Some people paint the surface when they use this sort of lino. They paint the whole surface with ink before they begin. They let it dry, and then they do their carving because they can see more or less what it's actually going to look like, sort of from the word go. It isn't a bad idea to do. And then, yeah, so then when you carve into it, so when you carve into it, you're able to really clearly see what you're doing. Do a thick one so you can see better. Yeah, so you can physically see what you're carving away. So that's not a bad idea. You can see I've put the ink on a bit thick and it's gone down into those cracks there a little bit. That gives you an idea. So you can do that, and that can work, you know, can work quite well. Not a bad thing to do. And this looks all right. There's no major problems there. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so there's a couple of processes where we've got to come up with the idea first. That's number one. Then we're doing the transferring onto the plate, and I'll show you that later. Then we're doing, oh, actually, no, I might mention that now. If you've got an image, just get a bit of paper. If you've got an image that you've got to draw, and here's my image, and I need to trace that across, what I can do is, so I've got my lino. I can put it on there, and then I can rub the whole way, and then when I lift up, you can see the beginnings of. I'll be able to see that. So that's probably the simplest way of doing it. There are other ways that you can do for image transfer. You can use Mod Podge or PVA glue. Look, I find most of those fairly messy, but that's just me. I'm a bit old school. I'd rather do that. You can also use carbon paper, which is hellishly expensive, but that's it there. It's just paper that's impregnated with carbon. So when, you know, if I draw here, it comes out there.